that, or I think most people have an employee mindset, right?
Mm,
Because in school they just teach you how to be an employee. They
yeah.
don't, or a paper pusher, I like to say. They don't necessarily teach us how to fully own who we are, or to change the world for something better.
Welcome to the Optimum Human Podcast, the show that interviews the world's top experts in fitness, nutrition, mindset, and beyond. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Optimum Human Podcast. My name's Brian McKay, he's Claude Petroulis, and we are your hosts. Today we've got a return guest, our first return guest, Mrs. Kerry Morgan. Kerry, how are you this morning?
I'm great, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing awesome.
I'm fantastic. I'm stoked to talk about what we're going to talk about. This is going to be, I don't know, it's going to be a knock 'em out, drag 'em out. It's no holds bars in this conversation, you know.
So we're talking about WWE?
Not quite.
Not quite. I think WWE is real. This is not. Or wait, is it the other way around? We're going to be talking about MMA tournaments. Kerry, do you want to explain MMA for our listeners, just in case they've been under a rock for the last, 10 years? 20 years, yeah.
It's funny because some have been under a rock. Even when I mention it on some other podcasts, they're like, well, what is that? And I'm like, what?
Really?
But
maybe they've been under the rock, WWE superstar.
Jesus.
I'll stop now. I have too much coffee in my system.
That's okay. MMA is mixed martial arts. So it is about different styles of talent that come together in a ring, and you have a certain amount of time to submit the other person, or you can submit or knock out or win. So it's 10 times better, I say, than boxing. But some people just like boxing, right? It's just different skills and different mindsets and different opportunities for people that have been wrestlers and, been athletes and just didn't have anything else to do with their life after college or after high school. This gives them other opportunities to show up completely aligned in their power, because when you are in mixed martial arts, it's just the mindset of winning, but the training that you have to do is so intense. So it definitely brings you to a different experience as a human being and also as a person, because I don't think anyone can really teach you how to fully be in your power, how to fully show up for yourself until you put in the grind, you show up every day, you commit every day mentally, physically, and spiritually, and do the work. So that to me is what MMA is. It's a total overall mindset shift into, I would say, your ultimate version of yourself.
Awesome. And for people who don't know, how did you get into the whole MMA situation? Just like a kind of a Cole's Notes version, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. So my husband was doing chicken, but before that, and they used to call in the neighborhood, he was called the Chicken Man. So everybody had nicknames. But our son did a little bit of karate, and we knew the owner of the karate studio. And so this guy said, hey, I want to, do these fights. And he wanted to do them in like high schools and stuff. And we're like, okay, we went to one and we're like, this could be so much better. And this is just when like MMA was kind of big, but not really. It was still like kind of showing up a little bit, but not as big as it is now. I mean, it was out there, but still a little bit under the carpet. And so we said, well, let's take it to the casinos. We know some people. My husband's friends with the guy from Live Nation. So we kind of from there just said, we'll do the business side. You make sure the fighters show up. You make sure we have good fights. I remember we were doing them in the House of Blues in Atlantic City where they have the balconies. You're looking down. It was an amazing experience. So that's how we got started. It was more or less, we saw an opportunity kind of landed in our lap, and we are the people that say yes because we were big vision. So we kind of seen that, and from there, that's where it started.
Awesome. And how did all the business stuff work? How did you guys deal with licensing? Were there a lot of barriers in that aspect?
Well, you mostly have to work with the state of New Jersey. So anything you have to do with any state is probably you need to just bite your tongue, right?
Yes, dealing with government agencies, I'd probably rather get teeth pulled than do that.
Yes.
What do you guys mean? It's so efficient. It's such a well-oiled machine.
They kind of just hate their lives, so they kind of make you hate dealing with them, right?
Israel loves company.
Yeah, and I'm like, you picked your job, not me. Even though at first it was not that bad. So it started to get bad after when you would see things, and try to keep your mouth shut, but you have integrity, so you want to just speak out, right? But in the beginning, it actually was not that bad. We kind of filled out we were partnered with this guy, and we realized that this guy wasn't doing what he was saying he was supposed to do. And he was telling all the people that we were the ones doing the fight. It was a lot of riffraff. So we bought him out. And that's what you do in business. You show up, you pivot, you shift, and you go. And so we just bought him out, and we had no idea about how to do the fighter side, but my husband just studied and he did that, and I turned into VP of everything else. And so that's how we just kind of rolled, and we just built our team around us, and we just kept going. We just didn't stop. But in reality, you do have to be able to adapt and realize when something feels like it needs to be changed, and be okay with the change and move quickly with it, right? Make a decision, own that decision, move on, shift your thoughts, shift the people around you what you need to, so that you can win and be where you need to be.
Yeah, it's so important. So many people get stuck and they just think that they're in this rut, or they're in this hole, and they have no concept of lateral movement. So it's just pivoting, like you're saying, is so crucial, especially nowadays when the world is changing. Like every year there's something new happening. So
yeah, something always trying to take your attention. But I'll go into a little bit detail. So we were doing fights every 6 weeks. And I'll give you a general idea of how that worked. So we have 60 fighters. That means we have to have place for them in the back of the event, right? So they can warm up. We have to get them all there on time so they can get weighed in. They get a certain time before the fight, they have to get weighed in. But let's go further, right? Like before anything even starts, before we even get to the show, we would have to submit 4 pieces of paperwork for each fighter.
Oh my God.
To the doctors. To a doctor. A doctor has to they have to go to the doctor first. They have to get all this blood work done, all this stuff has to come back. Then all that paperwork has to go to the state official. Then the state official has to approve that, okay? And the state official guy, because we had a guy that was a matchmaker type of guy, you would submit the matches to him, but he ended up dying, which was so weird. So then the state guy had control over everything. He literally had control over the fighters and the approval of the fighters, because we had a middleman in between at first. And I remember when he said this to me, he said, I don't know if this is bad news or good news, but now I'm doing everything. So that means he had complete control, just a regular official. Well, he's actually a state attorney general, I guess, maybe something like that. I don't know. Wait, let me think about it. No, he was he's actually just the, whatever, like for the Fighting Institute. He just runs that. He's like the lawyer for that. So anyway, he has control over approving the fights.
So he sanctions everything.
Yes, so he has control over approving the fights, which was just like horrible at that point, because now we realize how bad that was, because he would have complete control over if that fight was approved, or even if that paperwork was approved, or anything, right? And then sometimes he would not approve fights for us, and we would see him on other people's fight cards. So it was kind of that little, what's going on? If he didn't really like us or if he got mad at us, he would do certain things, right? So we had to deal with that. But I mean, that's a part of any business. There's going to be people out there. There's competition, but you just don't feel like you pay these people to show up, like these officials to do their job, and things like this happen. But so we have 60 fighters, so all that paperwork has to get approved. All those fights have to get approved. Now, let's say right before the fight, someone gets hurt and they drop out of the fight. So then we have to come back in and find somebody to replace that guy. And you only have a certain amount of time to get the paperwork approved. So if our fight's on Friday, then that means on Monday is the deadline to have all the fights approved and all your paperwork in. So we would try to get it in the week before. But if you lose a person, right, then you get this little bit of time to approve it, and they do not let you like go past that deadline. So say if I had a person that sold 200 tickets and his fighter dropped out like a couple days before the fight, then that means I had 3 days to get him to a doctor's, get the doctor to sign his paperwork, send the paperwork to the state, and do all that stuff. This is even before the fight starts, okay? So imagine all the paperwork getting faxed and all the stuff. I had to check on my end. This guy had to check it on his end. And half the time doctors don't even fill it out right. So then I had to resubmit it to the doctors, call the office, say, look, you got to fill this out. Okay, so that's just before the fight. When the fight starts on a Friday or a Saturday, whatever day we would have it, everyone would have to come at a certain time and get weighed in. So this means they have to make weight. Say they're off weight by a couple, like 1 pound, they would have to try to lose that weight in a certain amount of time or they couldn't fight.
How much time are we talking?
We're talking hours.
All right.
So,
sounds healthy.
So, they're like sweating and the
sweat it out, baby.
They're running around down the casino, running on the boardwalk with that silver stuff on because you have a fight range. Say it's 121 to 126, right? For the fighter. Well, maybe not that small. Maybe the chicks are like that, but they may have a couple guys. And that's the weight you have to be in. So if you're not in that weight, you necessarily cannot fight. They give you a little bit of room, but that's the weight. So we could have lost fighters all the way up to the show, and then they got to be in time after they weigh in, then they have to be back at the casino for a certain time before the fight starts. So you're dealing with humans, right? So just imagine dealing with that like consistently, because it takes us about 3 weeks, a week to recover after a fight, and then we're right back in it again for 4 weeks.
No,
trying to get everything up.
How many fighters are you dealing with in a particular event?
60, I said.
Oh, okay. So 60 each event?
Yes,
wow.
Because we used to have a ton. So, think about it like that. Well, one time we have 30 fights, if we had a big show, or sometimes we would have smaller. It just depends. But most of the time we would try to get as many. We would try to get 60 fighters, even if everybody was not fighting, so we could have backup. So we didn't have to, if we lost people.
Right.
But mostly we just try to have people on file. But that was after we learned when you just had 30 people and it had 15 fights, then sometimes we would only end up having 10 fights because we'd lose 5. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you really need to have as many fights as you can. Even if you have 23, you necessarily may only have 15.
And at this point,
what I'm saying? Because you're going to lose people.
Yeah.
At this point, was this your full-time job? Like you guys were both doing this fully, or were you? Wow. So
yeah.
It sounds like it definitely took a lot. I want to talk a little bit about dealing with the actual fighters and the personalities themselves. Have you ever encountered something where, a fighter goes kind of just bonkers and he just either doesn't want to fight or he feels offended or just, you're just dealing with the people
ego.
that have a ton of testosterone and ego, and they just they hit things for a living. So, how are your experiences with people who would I don't want to say fall out of line, but people who would
we had
disagree
quite a
with you?
few. So we did have quite a few. In the beginning, everyone wanted to fight. So we were mostly the kind of two top people in the area. So it was more they were on their good behavior, you know. And then you would get some sporadics that thought that they were really good, right? So I'll give you an example. Tiger Schulman. I don't know what area you guys are from, but Tiger Schulman is a big time kickboxing and MMA type center around this area on the East Coast. They do a lot of for kids and other thing like that. So when we first started in the House of Blues, we brought them on board and we had a lot of their fighters. So they really thought that we were partnering with them, which we weren't. It was our business, right? So they mainly they had like a spokesperson or a person that actually, well, I'm the actual person that got him connected with us. And I should have just kept it between me, because when two men kind of get together, like my husband and him were, talking, and then that's when all of the chaos starts, right? So he really did think that he was like running our show. It got to a point where it was just like he only wanted to fight certain people, and they just thought they were better than every fighter there, and they thought they can just show up whenever they want. It was just like really.
And there was no paperwork to support that, right?
Yeah,
it was just kind of more just like a relationship with you and your husband.
Yes, it was just a relationship that we built with a lot of teams and a lot of groups around here. But certain ones did feel like they were just the top performers at our event, so they could do whatever, and everyone kind of hated them, right? I'm just being honest. I mean, this happened. Yeah. So and they knew it too, because that's just how they acted, and nobody liked them. I mean, I'm serious. Like literally nobody, even in the back when they were just like training and warming up and stuff, like nobody like them. So in the beginning, we would just have all the guys like in group sections with A, B, C, D. This is your fight section. This is where if you had 4 or 5 fighters, you would be in this section. And then we had to start blocking them off, like covering them and making them more private. So,
holy shit.
Yeah, it was, and it's when you're doing a first couple events, you just realize, okay, well, we need to upgrade this and upgrade that. So as you build, you grow, is what I say. So you're always thinking of different things to make people feel better in that arena. But we had a lot of issues with just, egos and them thinking that they are better than everybody around them. I mean, the fighter's mindset is definitely a different skill, because they are completely training in a way that most people don't train. Like getting punched in the stomach 50 times a day, with gloves, and, punched in the face like 50 times a day, and still getting back up like nothing happened after a while, So it is you have to have a very, you have to learn how to talk to them, and you have to show them a experience that you're giving them that no one else can. So we were really good with teaching people and showing them that we love you like a family, right? So we give everybody the same respect, but when we felt like we were being taken advantage of, we did, we don't play that. So I'll give you an example. We had this one fighter, and he was big, massive, and we're talking 205, 219, or maybe 230 was his weight class.
Holy.
Right? I would say I think he's maybe 209, 215, somewhere on there. Anyway, so
and that's his fighting weight, right?
Yeah, that's his fighting weight. So he probably dropped down a little, but in the back hallway, he had an issue, or he said something, and he got so smart with me, like literally, like totally smart. So I'm that type of person. I'm super nice, but I do not take shit from anyone. And
I hadn't noticed at all.
So, because I remember this blatant, like, I was just talking about this a couple months ago. And he had said something, it was some problem he had an issue with. I mean, we're putting our money, our time, our son's college fund in for the, do you know what I mean? To make this happen, and they think they could just show up and be like, hey, you owe me this and that. We don't owe you anything, right? So to get to the point, he said something. I turned around, I'm nose to nose with him, and I am screaming in his face. Like this is the back hall right before he was about to go. Maybe he was about to go on a couple fights, because they stand at line, or we introduced them. I forget where it was or where he was or where he was going. I just remember screaming at him. I'm in his face and I'm daring him to even think about doing anything, right? Because whatever he said, he totally just lit me up, and I was so pissed I just lost it. So yes, we do have those situations, and we always do just stay very calm until it's like we've had enough. And usually my had enough is, I remember what you did. Do not ever think you're going to get away with anything else. So, yeah. So that's a good example.
How did it feel yelling at a plus 200-pound professional fighter?
Well, usually your adrenaline is just pumping for the whole fight, right? I usually don't sleep for like 2 days through that whole before, like when we have that date, and then that whole weekend, I probably don't sleep. So it's just, and I don't drink coffee. So it's just adrenaline. You're just going, you just know you have to get it done. And so I think I didn't even think about it. It's just me reacting to a situation of stop hearing him cry or whine or whatever he did, and shut him down, and just like, this is how it's going to be. And if you don't like it, just leave. I was going to curse, but I won't do that.
You can swear as much as you want.
I was going to say, it sounds like a bit of a metaphorical sleeper hold.
Yeah, and it was intense. So I do remember him because he was just whining about something, and I just couldn't take it. I was like, listen, and I think he might have been done with his fight, and we may have kicked him out after. I don't know, but I know somebody grabbed him up after. So I usually had a lot of people backing me. So I didn't.
You had a posse?
Yeah, I usually had a posse because it was super nice. I mean, we treated them with highly, respect, and we did a lot for these young men. So it was funny.
Did he step back or calm down after you started yelling at him?
Laying into him?
I don't necessarily, because it has been a couple years, but I think he was a little pissed. We were like going at it, and I'm sure he said something back to me, and I'm sure I said something back to him. So yeah, but I usually don't fear much, and you shouldn't if you, I mean, in reality, fear is just you thinking that someone else is, better than you, or you can't, do something that anyone can do if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, it can shut you down.
Right. So, and I feel like in that sense, that type of environment, the entertainment environment, is just, you're going to get those types of personalities. You're going to get that. But I am not the person to let people walk on me or take advantage of me. And I guess it's just from my childhood, but I mean, I always knew, my dad always told me, if you don't stand up for yourself, no one else is, right? And that is where that thing, I'm sure everyone had a bully in high school where if you didn't say something to them, they just picked on you until, you lost your shit, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's happened to all of us. And so there's just a point in your life where you say enough is enough. And, I've said that way back in high school. So at this point, it was like, do you know who I am? It was more or less that. Do you know what I mean? And I really didn't want a lot of people to know that I was the owner's wife, because then people are like, oh, can you give me free tickets, and stuff like that. So I definitely did separate that space and just made myself to be an employee, make everyone think I was an employee, not an owner.
For sure.
So that it just kept that, but there were some certain people that knew, and it was just a point of, he was out of control and he just needed to be put in his place. So, you just have to do that.
Gotta lay the smack down once in a while.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I was intrigued. You've mentioned the fighter's mindset a few times. And just so everybody gets a clear definition, what would you define it as?
I would say a fighter's mindset is, you're in that situation of complete failure. You think you're going to um, everyone's going to feel bad that you're losing, or you let everyone down in that situation because you're just about to lose, but you work so hard, you put all this time in, and then you end up winning the fight. Right? So a fighter's mindset can be for anyone that's an entrepreneur or a small business owner or self-employed or a solopreneur, where everyone's thinking you're never going to make it, you're losing, this is never going to work, and then you come back and you keep pushing through and you win. We've had so many situations where we thought the fight was over, right? And then the guy gets out of that round, and then he gets out of the next round and he comes back to win at the end. So because when you have 3 rounds and you're fighting 3 or 4 minutes each round, or 5 minutes depending, it's, you're in that situation. It can go either way, but you step into a mindset and you shift into this. It could be alter ego. It could be your highest version. It could be the performance that you need. It could be that, you go back to your training, and you just shift. So a fighter's mindset is you stepping out of what you think you are and becoming who you are meant to be.
And I think that's a great metaphor, and I like the way that you use it and bring it over to business and life, because life, if you've got that sort of mindset where it's not just, like where you're a victim or where you can't do anything. In North America, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Like there are some barriers, but there is so much opportunity. And people just get this mentality, and I would call it the not fighter's mindset.
So eloquently put, Claude.
Right? I'm a wordsmith, Brian. What can I say?
Yes.
But
that's true. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm just glad that you're able to transplant this idea that you've got from running, this fight operation to people, like, I don't want to say regular people, because I'm sure fighters are regular people too, but to kind of like the everyday person. So it's I think people listening should work on their fighter's mindset.
Yeah, they definitely should work on that. Or I think most people have an employee mindset, right? Because in school they just teach you how to be an employee. They don't, or a paper pusher, I like to say. They don't necessarily teach us how to fully own who we are, or to change the world for something better. I mean, they kind of teach you how to change the world, but they're really just teaching you, well, you have to learn how to do math in case you're working for an accountant. Do you know what I mean? Or something like that. They don't really teach you how to be an entrepreneur. I mean, they're starting to now, but back before they never really did. And your parents usually taught you, well, you got to go to school so you get a really good job so that you can buy a house, you can get married. You know what I mean? It's like that cookie cutter, like, where did that come from? It's like, that doesn't even work anymore, like.
Yeah, that's the old factory worker model, where everybody sits in their little rows and they they listen to their alarm bells ringing, and that's how they know that's their next shift or whatever. It's a fucked up system in that kind of sense, because it's teaching us to, I don't want to say slaves, but it's teaching us to be like people who aren't in charge of our own future,
Right.
And we have to realize we are.
Now, the slave thing is probably really good, because it is making people like almost into zombies, right? And your phone, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, phones are great because you reach out a ton of people. That, what you can do on here is so much more powerful than when I was growing up and I had to beeper and I had to like go to the payphone, beep somebody, wait for them to call me back. But being on your phone, it's like it's taking away your sense of thinking, or your sense of being in control. Even when you go on a Google, or you Google an address, and I'm like, there's a quicker way. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of map it out, but then I go in and go deeper and say, okay, what's the quickest way? Because you're trying to take me like 20 minutes out of my way. You know what I mean? But there's making us like think this convenience is kind of numbing us. And there's some things that I've done where it helps me, and I think that fighter mindset, but it helps me to stay in charge, is like when I get a new phone, I did not put my contacts over I just kept the phone numbers of when people would text me, so I would remember the number and not just the name. Do you know what I mean? Because the name just lets you're like, oh, there's a name, but you forget their number.
Oh,
Like, I
nobody
know.
knows a phone number nowadays.
Exactly.
I
So
know like
I
two
keep
numbers.
exactly. So I keep everyone's number, and that's how so when you pop up, you're a number to me, not a name, which is good because I mentally want to remember your number. You know, like that is what I need to remember. I don't need to remember. I know your name. That's not what I need to remember. But it just keeps you a little bit more on your toes with just forgetting that you still need to remember certain things and not just glide by life, in this like zombie sense of whatever the phone tells me I'm going to do, like.
Right. The phone is a great slave, not a great master.
Yes. Yeah. No, that is so true. But we used to have like the head guy from Sopranos that died. He came to our events. We had a lot of elite people come, and the opportunities were amazing. The connections were amazing. And some of the having, you meet a ton of people, you make a ton of relationships in that area, which is very amazing. A lot of the people that we have had at our fights have actually been UFC fighters, and some of the referees now, refereed for us. So it was kind of cool just to have that interaction and, what we had going on with that.
For sure. Now, you were saying a little bit about, staying in charge and kind of being able to control the direction of your life. What other methods would you say that you use to stay in charge of the changing world around you? Because I like the phone number one. I probably won't use that because I'm terrified. But is there anything else that me or Brian or anyone listening could use to? I mean, they can use the phone number one if they're brave, for sure. But anything more entry level?
Yeah. So to know and own who you are always going to have everyday situations show up. And you have to know exactly what you're doing in your day. So I would tell people it could be as simple as, and everyone says make a list, and that's fine. Do your hardest thing first. And that comes back to when we were doing the fighters. It's like, what's the hardest thing I need to get done? I would have to get all their paperwork done. I mean, that was like the main thing. Once we knew who was locked in, it was like paperwork, because it was so overwhelming to have stacks and stacks of paperwork of just people,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, do that hardest thing first. And it makes you feel so much more confidence and strength. And then next time, and then you can blow through the easy stuff, right? So here's what people do. They do the easy stuff, and then they wait to do the hard stuff. And then they're like, oh my God, it's so hard, I don't want to do it. And then they end up not doing the hard stuff. In reality, if you do your hard stuff first thing in the morning, before your brain, I would say between 7 a.m. and 11, before your brain starts to be like, I'm not doing anything, I'm going to be on social media, and you start to like zone out, do your hardest stuff first, because then all your easy stuff will get done so much faster. It will literally get done 10 times faster, your easy stuff, once you do your harder stuff. So that would be the most entry level. And a lot of people are like, oh, I know, I already heard that. And when people say stuff like that, well, are you using it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to test it. Because, we hear a lot of stuff. I hear a lot of stuff. Doesn't necessarily mean I actually do it, but eventually I will test it. If I hear it a couple times, it means I'm hearing it for a reason. You need to show up. You need to do it, right? So for me, it's like if I hear things, I'm very in tune to my intuition and my awareness. So if I hear things and I'll get like I'll see a Facebook post or I'll see something and it keeps saying the same thing, that's meant for a reason. That means I'm missing something in my day, or I'm missing something in my energy that I need to show up for, or I need to do. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have those days too. Like yesterday, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then I'm like, you know what? Nope, I'm not going to do that. I took a day and I was just like, I'm going to get my nails done. I'm going to do this stuff. But I mean, I'm a person that shows up all the time. So for me to take a day, it was like, I am just going to take it, right? But most people are like, it takes them 2 weeks to do something that really should only take you an hour. in
For sure.
reality, you know? So I like to say that that fighter's mindset is, people think as MMA as being a dirty sport. They're beating people up, and it is gory sometimes, you know, and it does get hardcore.
It's
But
amazing.
yes,
I
and
love it.
but the wrestlers and all those people that didn't really have anything to do with their life, you know, this gives them another chance to still be in that sport, to learn, to expand their mindset, to expand their performance, their capability, right, in who they are as a person, and know on that other side they gave it their all. They may not have won this fight, but they're coming back stronger, right? And that is what most people lack, is that I'm going to come back stronger next time, right? Because so many people get beat down once and they're like, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to be an entrepreneur anymore. I'm going to pack my shit and leave. Instead of saying, well, that's just a bump. You know, I'm going to keep pushing forward. I'm going to have resilience. I'm going to have perseverance, and I'm going to win. And when you are in that mindset, and then that is, you know, and I think a lot of people can learn from that. If you follow two people in MMA and you see their experience and what they've done, it's amazing. So, and I think that you can learn a lot. People just think of it as, oh, these are just dirty people fighting, you know, and that's how some people look at it. They probably would never watch it. They probably just think it's just the most god awful thing. Why are these people doing this, you know, to themselves, blah, blah, blah. And I say you can learn a lot from everything that you see in life. And that's the one thing that I think most people take for granted is, you know, being able to see someone else's life and learning from it, no matter what level they're on. And being in that fight it has to be the almost hardest thing you can ever imagine. Being in a ring with a guy that you know you have to try to beat, but not only that, you have the lights around you that are beating on you. Okay, let's go into their mind and feel them at a moment of what they're experiencing, right? You have your coaches behind you screaming at you while you're doing the fight, and all they need to do and what they go into is their inner self strength. They go into their complete power and focus because they have the crowd screaming at them, right? Can you imagine being in a ring, lights on you, bright, your team, your coaches screaming at you, and then the audience screaming. Most of them may hate you or love you, right?
Yeah.
So they're totally against you. All these distractions, and they're still in complete focus. So what people can learn in this world, this 21st century of, you know, I like to say, to detox your distraction, is to find your zone of genius, find where you know that place you go to in your mind that keeps you centered and keeps you focused and in aligned action or aligned thoughts with your actions. And that's where you stay. When you can find that spot in your body, in your mind, body, and spirit, you will be able to find the success, the purpose, your intention, what you're looking for in your next page or next chapter of your life.
You know what? And it's true. And if you look at two different fighters, and one's used to the lights and the shouting, and the other one's distracted and he's all freaked out, you pretty much know right there, like who's gonna take it. Like, there's only so much stress the body can take, and if you're freaked out by your surroundings, you're gonna have such a more difficult ride than if you were kind of used to it. You've thought it all through. You've thought of all the important things, and you kind of just focus on what you're saying. It's just focus on the goal at hand. So
Yes.
like, yeah, I've got one more question, then I'll hand over the microphone, so to speak, to Brian, because I'm sure he's got a few things. I mean,
Brian's so quiet. I didn't even know he was there.
I know.
I'm not actually here.
He went out for a couple cigarettes, and yeah, he's back. So I want to know what is like the biggest fiasco or disaster that ever occurred to you guys when you were running the business, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It really is. Kudos, Claude.
Thank you, guys. I feel so much praise. I'm happy.
When we had a show, and I think it just felt like it was falling apart, right? Like all the fights we had together were not, they weren't getting approved, or they did get approved, but we lost fighters at the end and we couldn't get another person in, or they came in 5 pounds over, they weren't able to fight. And we were down to like 7 fights or something in a night, which is almost unheard of. So then you're like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Especially because you have people that sell tickets, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't even go into I had to get tickets, send tickets in the mail to people. Excuse me, because back then we didn't have that Ticketmaster crap, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we could have done like some automation, but it just, the way the casino works, you have to get the tickets printed, you know what I mean? It was just like, they're still a little bit in the
dark ages.
Yes, in the twilight zone a little bit. So we had to do the tickets printing, and they had to all this kind of stuff. So sending out the tickets and having all of that ready, and then having tickets come back. Like one show, we had so many tickets come back, right? Because
so people would just send them back.
Yeah, if the fighters
and ask for a refund.
No. If the fighters didn't sell the ticket, they would have so many tickets to sell, and they can make commission and and other things like that off of tickets. So if the tickets came back, then that meant like maybe they lost their fight, right? So say if I sent somebody tickets and their fighter got not approved, or they didn't get approved and they didn't have a fight, we'd have to tell them before the fight. Right? We didn't like say, oh my God, you still have a fight, and then show. Like, that's what some people would do. They would make people come to events knowing that their guy fell off and never tell them. I mean, some other industries, not to mention, but locally, would actually set kids up. So one guy would have 10 fights and the other kid would be brand new, no fights, and they would put them 2 in the ring, and the state would approve it, which I don't know how, and the kid would get their ass kicked.
Yeah, it's a bloodbath.
You know what I mean?
Right.
There's things that happen in this world that are probably not for the best, but we didn't know that because we were just business people coming in, and running it how we want someone to be with our son, like we don't want anything like that to ever happen. So we always just were very honest and told people exactly what was going on. So, when that type of stuff happens, then you just have to go with it. So we tried to like spread out as many fights as we could, make it last, do like competitions where we would have people come up from the audience and, announce fights, or, like win prizes, and we would throw t-shirts. I mean, so we were really entertaining them when they were in the audience. We've done that other stuff before. We would have pull people up for VIP and stuff like that. But when you lose almost all because we usually had 15 or 17 or 18 fights a night, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And when you're down to 7, so you do have to really just figure that out. And sometimes you lose money, and sometimes you lose money.
And how big was the average audience? I know you threw around the number 200, but what would you say?
200 was not ever a number. We usually had, when we moved to the smaller venue, we had like 1,400 people could fit in there, and that's how many.
And that's a small venue.
Yeah, that was a small one. And then we used to do the House of Blues, which could fit, I think that one could fit about 5,000 people.
Holy shit.
We didn't do like the big UFCs, right?
Yeah.
We're in the casinos, so
but that's still a sizable number.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's whatever fit in there. To me, it just seemed normal, you know what I mean? Like, because we've always had those people, you know what I mean? So actually for me, I just thought it was small numbers because we've had the House of Blues was really big. It was huge. We started there. And so it had the balcony, and then it had, downstairs standing only we had, and some seating, and, so it was kind of big. That one was pretty big. And, and I like to tell people that was an experience for me to be who I am now. So I feel like you are always going to have opportunities around you all the time. And when people are always saying, oh, I'm not sure, why I'm where I'm at right now, it's because you've had opportunities and you never said yes to them. You never gave yourself permission, or you never opened, I call it your wealth container. And your wealth container is your mindset of what you think you should be making or owning or attracting or receiving. When you're thinking a certain way, oh my God, I can only make this much a month and I need, instead of saying, how can I make more on different streams of income, right? So in MMA, we had always had different streams. We had the VIP, we had this, we had sponsorships, we had that. So one event, you should be having like 8 streams of income coming in, and people can think of their life, like what you're doing right now. Think about how you can have different streams of income coming in, right? And people that are employees think, oh my God, I have to work my 40 hours a week or I'm not going to have any income. But they're not thinking of how can I have more income coming in than just that in their job, in their current job, or, in their field. They can partner with someone else and say, hey, I've been doing this for 10 years. Do you need a little help? Let's do something on the side and maybe take you 10 hours a week. You have another stream of income, right? Then that's why people are so devastated when they've been doing a job for 20 years and they realize the company goes out of business and they have nothing. They don't know what to do and they don't know how to restart over because they got so caught in that, well, this is all I do and this is all I'm good at and I need to follow directions and I need to follow rules. So.
Yeah, and I find it's interesting that there's a lot of fighters, especially the successful ones, and they start from really humble beginnings, but you can pretty much see them craft their future. Like, Conor McGregor, he's a really good example of that. He was literally like poor. Like he didn't really have a job. He was just training at the gym. I think his girlfriend was supporting him for a time. And, now he's a multi-millionaire and he's in talks for fighting Floyd Mayweather. So it's just, it just goes to show that fighter's mindset, a lot of these guys, they've programmed themselves to be different. They've programmed themselves to, carve out the path that they want. So
I love Connor. He is so cute.
He's hilarious.
Yeah. And he's like, he just like says the craziest stuff and everyone loves it. And here's the thing, because why does he need to have a rule? And when he wasn't making anything, he knew he was going to be the best, right? No matter what. And that's what it takes to succeed in anything that you want to become, is just know that you are the absolute best. I mean, we had fighters, and people are like, oh my God, fighters aren't anything. We had fighters that were were like chefs at big restaurants, and you know what I mean? But they fought on the side. So this was them having extra income on the side. We had fighters that were teachers. We had fighters that you wouldn't even think, you know what I mean? So, and people think that fighters are just a certain type of people, but they're not. They're any normal person that just wants to challenge their body and their mind and go into something that could be rewarding in the long run.
Yeah, that's true. I think Rich Franklin was actually a teacher also. I might be thinking of the wrong guy. Yeah, so and that was his thing. They're like, oh, this guy's a teacher and now he's getting his head kicked in or whatever. But it's like, it just goes to show. And a lot of these guys, they've got university degrees. They've got some, really interesting backgrounds. So it's not just they're like these meatheads that just like to hit each other in the face. They're quite clever, especially when they get to the higher levels.
Oh, yes.
Kerry, I've got one final question. Sorry.
Okay.
And yeah, I know I said that before. Sorry, Brian. But
this has been the welcome to the Claude Show.
Welcome to the Claude Talks About MMA show. I was going to ask: are there any fighters that were in your circuit, in your kind of organization, that have moved on to like the UFC? Are there any names that people would recognize, or are they like referees, or?
Yeah, so there is, but my memory could be so let me think, because okay, so there's is his name Kevin? All right, so the referee, he does a lot of them. Keith, he's on the UFC now. Keith refs a lot of ours. And then the big bald guy, he came to a lot of ours for refereeing. He's huge. I forget. I have tons of pictures with him. I will send you a picture of him. And then, he's the big bald guy. I can't. I have pictures.
Steve from Jerry Springer?
No. But who is the fighters? Oh my gosh, like I knew you guys were going to ask me, and I was going to do the research because I know that most of the ones that are from New Jersey, they have fought for us or they've been in the corner for fighters. He's like on my, he's a little tiny guy, and I know as soon as I get off, I will have his name.
We can always edit it in or throw it in the show notes.
Yeah. There's been a couple actually, and we do watch them. Pete, I think, is one. There's a redhead kid. There's been a couple. There's been about 5.
All right.
So,
awesome.
Nice.
I'll get the names for you because I'm sure I'm friends with them on Facebook and stuff.
It must be cool to see that you've kind of helped develop them and you're part of their path to, to their future.
Yes, some of them had actually reached out to us and said, you guys have helped us in our journey become, better fighters and just men in general. So it was really cool because we always treated them like human beings, like we treated them like just gave them the best opportunity for success. And we were always really nice to them. So, I mean, like I said, when I didn't sleep, when you're in the entertainment business, you literally get everything handed to you. So that was probably the worst thing ever because you can go any club, any place you want, and you're just like, hey, whatever you want, right? But we didn't just put on the show, like after the show, people wanted to hang out with us and stuff, so it's a lot of, work,
You can't be an introvert.
You have to stay out late. You have to just be there. They want to talk to you. They want to, line up their next fight. They want this. They want to be that experience, and they want your advice on what the next step they want to take in their life. So there's a huge opportunity here on seeing people's potential, but being a mentor to people and watching them grow from where they were the first time to where we've seen them become. So, and that's what I think. So Frankie Edgar was like, he did some stuff in the corner for some fighters. I'm just figuring, I was like, let me look it up. Jimmy Rivera. So we did have a lot of guys from there that moved in. I know there's a couple smaller ones too. But they've been doing really good. We always watch their fights, so it's so cute to see them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I will officially shut up now. Brian, you can have the last,
3 minutes
of the show.
Right. Well, actually, no, this has been great. So, the only question that I kind of have is, I know you talked about, not sleeping for the entire weekend and having to go out and party and, be around everybody. What is like one thing that you wish you would have done better as far as like your health and maintaining that balance, and what's something that maybe you did do to try and negate some of the negative effects of not sleeping for days on end?
So I always am glad that I always drink a ton of water, like, because I'm a healthy person anyway, but I think what happens when you're in business, you get caught up in business. You do. And it happens to the healthiest person on earth. You know what I mean? You get caught up in your business. You forget to eat. You forget to do other things. I did always make sure I did eat at least once a day because I mean, when you're in that, you really don't have time to breathe. It's like you're moving. Things that I wish I would have done better is probably said no to a couple of those shots, right? Those shots of Patron.
Right. It's always tequila. It's always tequila.
I have to say no to Patron, though.
Yeah. I mean, it usually just kept me going, and I was actually good because if I did one, I would just be like, try to keep it out, keep it lasting for a little bit. But we had a great time, don't get me wrong, but but definitely drinking the water, saying no a little bit more to some of that kind of stuff, maybe eating a little bit more than just that one quick meal that you're shoving down. And that, I mean, so I literally I was down to like 115, which for me, that's okay because I always that size, but I was like 5'6". I just felt like I was totally getting ripped. And I think I was kind of afraid that I was too tiny right? For
Mm-hmm.
me, even though I felt good, but I I wasn't completely secure in owning my power back then, I guess, like I knew all this stuff was happening, but it just felt so normal. But it also, I didn't get caught up in like, oh, that this is my life. I don't know. I guess just mentally, I just felt like whatever happens, happens. Do you know? Like I just never put
Yeah,
like,
just
this is what I'm doing. Yeah. So
kind of
it
roll
never
with it.
really, yeah, just rolled with it. And so it never really came to light until we didn't do it anymore, how much we had accomplished. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're in it, you're just growing it and you don't really see that this is huge. I mean, we were about to expand. I mean, there was so much that we have achieved, and it was absolutely amazing. So, and as when you pull back a little bit and you kind of, I always say, look to the past for your wins and your rewards so that you can own who you need to be now. We accomplished a ton. And I remember meeting like Jimi Hendrix. Oh my gosh, he was so amazing. And to see him as a fighter grow and just was like, oh my gosh, because recently he just won. And he was at a point in his life too where he wasn't really winning. He was losing a lot of fights. He wasn't getting the right fights. And just to see him shift and say, this weight class is better, and figure out what was working, what he needed to adapt to so that he could be a better fighter. And now he just like a couple fights ago, I guess he won. And it was just like, oh my God, he's so cool. Like, because you could see, I can see, not everyone would be able to see, but I can see how they've grown over the years and how they've adapted so they can win. Instead of just saying, okay, well, everyone thinks I'm losing, so this is where I need to be. I'm going to adapt. I'm going to change. I'm going to shift. I'm going to rewrite. I'm going to recraft. I'm going to rebuild, and I'm going to show up. Right. So that I feel
it's an awesome message.
Yeah.
Okay. Kerry, do you have like 5 more minutes?
Yeah. Sure.
All right. I'm going to unmute myself again. So I just wanted to have like a natural, I guess, ending or a finality to the story. So you're no longer doing MMA shows, right?
Right. We are no longer doing MMA shows. Do you want to hear how it unraveled?
Yeah. I actually, I would love to hear how it unraveled.
Okay. So, my husband butted heads with the guy from the state, and it was more or less, I was the medium person. I was the person making sure they weren't fighting, trying to keep them calm. In reality, I was the adult. In reality, we had built a team that worked in Atlantic City. So our big vision was to tri-state, do Pennsylvania, do Delaware or whatever, do New York or whatever was going to open up. And what I wanted to do was like, let's move, me and you, not move, but shift to do this Pennsylvania before it, got approved. It was about to get approved. I wanted to start there so that when that happened, we had our established people staying there, kept our team in New Jersey, and that meant we wouldn't have to deal with that commissioner anymore, right? Mm-hmm. That sanction anymore. And so our team would have dealt with that. We would have, hired a person to set up the fights. My husband, not to be mean, but, it was his baby. I understand that. He wanted to kind of control everything, wanted to stay there. He was butting heads with the guy. And I just said, I had enough. I'm done. Like, I've absolutely done. And I literally, usually when I say stuff, it usually unravels pretty quickly because I'm very intuitive, but I didn't realize that. Like, I did realize, but I didn't realize how it happened so quickly when you set your mind to something and how quickly you can do stuff. So I literally said, I'm done. And 2 seconds later, they're getting on a fight. Him and the commissioner are arguing outside of the cage. So the camera pans onto them two arguing. And when we renewed our license, he never approved it, there was no viable reason for him not to approve it. He was just being a dick. And he knew if he didn't approve our license, that all those fighters would go somewhere else, right? Because they wanted to fight. So that's kind of much how it happened. We went over to Pennsylvania. We did a couple shows over there. And but my husband was actually the person that had a meeting, since we knew a lot of people at Live Nation, we had a contact and we reached out to the person at Comcast. And from there, our first show in Pennsylvania was on Comcast, because they weren't really putting shows on regular TV. Do you know what I mean? It was just kind of starting. So
Very underground.
he actually planned it and got that deal approved. And then one of our fighters a guy that we knew, we had that show in Pennsylvania. It was going to be on Comcast and everything. And then our very final main event guy never showed back up. He came to the weigh-ins, he did everything, and he just didn't show. And we knew this kid. And we're like, I think he was afraid. And it comes down to, but you're screwing us and we've done everything. It was to the point then where I had had enough. I had had enough of just, like I said, we dealt with a lot of egos. We dealt with a lot of trainers. We dealt with a lot of people, and it was just us dealing with it. You know what I mean? And they were coming right to us. And I was like, we need to separate ourselves. He didn't want to listen, and I was done. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. So it was pretty much, in your head, you think you're done, but then you miss it, like you're like, oh my God, I'm done. But yeah, so it kind of did, that, because we were definitely ready to just move to a different state and build that. And that's what we should have done, because it was time. And then that whole incident wouldn't have happened, and, and it wouldn't have happened, but, it is what it is. So obviously it was meant to be, and it had to happen. And I kind of put it out in the universe. So the universe kind of gave it to me.
it works in weird ways like that. It's true.
It definitely does. But he actually was the person that he sat down with Comcast, and that's how they got on. And I mean, we still had some shows playing on Black Belt TV and stuff, and we had some money coming in that way. So, but yeah, I mean, like I said,
over it.
I was definitely, if we were staying in that state, I was definitely over it. And moving to another state and building, I mean, that was definitely what we needed to do. And it was enough. It was enough for two people to do, it was enough, because it was a lot. Every 6 weeks for 5 years it was definitely enough. I mean, we did phenomenal, I would say, for what we did over those years. And it was a great learning experience. And every once in a while you get that little pang in your heart, like, what if, and it's just because it was a part of your life. It's just like if you had a girlfriend and you thought you were going to marry her, and you kind of think about her when a song comes on,
All right, now I'm starting to get teary eyes here.
And you're like, well, what if I would have said yes or got that ring, or what if that would happen? Because for us, in reality, we put this work in because we knew how big MMA was and UFCs, and we planned on selling and, moving on, and I retired. Like, that was it. It was over. Like, this was it. This was our end game. And it didn't kind of seem like to go that way.
It never does. It's never like a perfect end to the chapter,
It never, no. But you know what? I took a couple years and just figured out what I needed to do. I had to rebuild myself up. I had to re-heal, and that's what I did. And I feel so much better. So.
And now you're helping other people do it, like one-on-one and in groups. And, I love seeing all your posts on social media. You're what is it? You're 500 abs a day now?
Yes. So I think I'm at 120. Today will be 121. When I'm done with you guys, I'm going to do it. I went running already, and then I said, let me just do this, because once I take a shower, I kind of don't want to have to.
Right.
Good.
For sure.
But yeah, and that was for me, because I needed to show up. I felt like my energy was a little off. I felt like, well, you're not doing enough, and, people are like, you should never say you could always do more. You're not doing enough, or be down on yourself. But sometimes you need to just shake up your shit, shake up your life, and just totally feel like, what do you need to do to just make you feel ultimate experience in life, or have an ultimate life or an adventure. And, some people like traveling, some people like writing stories. For me, I was like, I need to know that I'm doing something that is going to just spank me a little bit. Even if I can't do a full workout, if I do this, I still can feel good. I could still stretch out my spine. I could still do some, move my body. So
yeah, and you asked that question, right? And a lot of people, they just kind of fall into this routine and they never ask those bigger overarching questions. So I'm proud of you. I mean, you're doing more than I am at this point.
Yeah.
So. All right, Brian, any last words before we get Kerry's info and we wrap up?
I got nothing. Just obviously you're like I said, it's been the Claude show. The MMA I haven't been a fan of hugely in a lot of years, so I'm totally out of the loop. So I just sat back and learned a lot. So
yeah, we call these episodes the Claudecasts.
That's good.
Well, I call them that. Brian just shakes his head and
pretty much
kind of wonders why he still works with me. But Kerry, where can people find out more about you and what you do?
You can find me Kerry Morgan. That's just me I do a lot on just my regular Facebook page, but everywhere else it's 21st Century Blueprint.com, or same thing on social media. It's Instagram, LinkedIn is Kerry Morgan, and I have a business page on Facebook. But I'm doing a 5-day challenge. It's coming up. Hopefully I can get this pulled together this week. I'm getting everything lined up on my Facebook ads, but it's the millionaire mindset, and everyone is like, and I was testing it, trying to figure out, do people really want this? Like, who's going to show up? Because life's a test. Like, no matter what you put out there, you have to test it, see if people like it, if they like the name, if they like the experience. And people are like, millionaire. They're like, ooh, I don't want to hear that word or whatever. I love it because obviously I wouldn't do it if I wasn't one. But on another hand, it's not always about people. If you add up all the money you made your whole life, you're probably been a millionaire and you just didn't even freaking realize it. You know what I mean? And, being a millionaire, it's just about a feeling. It's an experience. So if you ever wanted to achieve more, you need to feel it first. You need to have the emotion behind the action so that you can become that person or that experience you want out of life. And they say now that millionaires are the new middle class. So I think more people should show up.
And you know what? It is about having like a rich mindset. It doesn't just mean about money, as I guess the three of us know. But it's money is important. But if your mindset is poor and you have all the money in the world, it's like, fuck, what's the point?
Right. Well, exactly.
Lottery winners.
That's what I was just going to say. How many of them have had a ton of money and lost it all because they didn't have the mindset if they were good enough or what to do with it? How many athletes, you know what I mean, that have shit? How many,
MC Hammer.
people that, right? Or how about Allen Iverson? He was huge. He has shit because he felt like, I'm too good to ever pack luggage. I'll just buy clothes everywhere I travel. You know what I mean? Just like stupid shit. That, which is fine, but and no one taught him how to use money. And a lot of people don't tell you what to do with money or how to think. Or like when you go to the grocery store and people are like, oh my God, that's too expensive. It's fucking strawberries. If you really want them, buy them. Do you know what I mean? Your first mindset shouldn't be they're too expensive, because if you should spend as much money on food because that's the only thing that sustains you to actually live, in reality.
It's an investment.
So, yeah, I mean, it should be more than you paying a coach $10,000 for them to tell you to freaking do something that's not in alignment with who you are. So, and I said it. So many people are spending money on coaches that haven't even achieved half the stuff that, it's just hysterical what's going on out there. I just laugh.
It is, and people need help and they need guidance, and I think it's good that we're all here. And also, if people want to listen and they want to hear more of Kerry, we do have a previous podcast, so go back and download that one. We get through a lot of interesting topics in that. But Kerry, thank you for coming on again. We might get you on a third time. We might get you to do a three-peat,
You guys are cute. Thank you. This was amazing. I had a ton of fun. And I think that this story really needs to get out because no one knows behind the scenes of MMA. And, I'm sure it could have been more intense. I may have like toned it down a little bit because, there's just, I didn't tell people's names and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know what? People see the finished product, right? They don't see all the shit, the machinery working behind it to make it happen. So I think it was really interesting, and to not just see MMA like that, but you can look at most businesses and everything. Like there is a lot of stuff behind the scenes that is working to make that happen.
Exactly. And that's the key. You need to be back there, and you need to really, realize that it's just it's not for everyone. People really want to do some things, but you have to really have that desire, or you're just not going to make it, and you're going to feel sad that you feel sorry for yourself. So you really got to just, and just for one more thing, let me just explain.
Go for it.
The reason I'm doing the 500 abs a day, and it's not necessarily to achieve the abs, okay? It's for the showing up every day. It's for the commitment every day. What that does is mentally making me stronger to show up for the other things that I want to achieve, right? And people think, oh, it's just, I want to be sexy. But yeah, I do want to be sexy. I've always been sexy, so that's not even an issue. But it's more or less of like when people have a hard time flossing every day. You know what I mean? Like when you get to those simple habits and you repeat them over and over, they get so ingrained into you that you can accomplish the hardest things because now you've tackled the simplest actions in your self-confidence, your self-assurance, your self-discipline, your self-awareness. And so the 500 abs a day for me is what I'm trying to teach people is, yeah, it was hard as hell, and I'm still going. I've gotten over that hump, and there will be days where they'll still be hard and I won't want to do them, and I will do it. There's times where I literally in mid-post fell asleep because I was posting the 500 abs and I never posted it. I did it, but I was going to post it on Facebook, and then I literally fell asleep, and it was just like I never even sent the post, right? Or if I sent it and it was like half written, half wasn't. But this is about the things you need to do for yourself, your inner strength, and how that is going to affect your overall experience in success, in entrepreneurship, in moving forward, and getting the work done. So.
And I love it. And I love what you said, showing up, show up every day. So
exactly.
Important.
And it doesn't have to be for showing up for someone else. You need to show up for yourself. That is what makes people winners, when they figure out that you're not here to really worry about what other people think. You need to show up for yourself, because that is the person that you need to find you need to make a connection with yourself first. And then everything starts to change. You will see it change instantly when you show up for yourself.
100%. Kerry, thank you. It's been a blast, like always.
It really has been. Thank you.
Brian, thank you, sir. Everyone, thank you for listening. We can get all the info in the show notes. And thank you, everyone.
Thanks. See you later.
Right.
Bye.
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 Thanks for listening to the Optimum Human Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to head on over to iTunes and give a 5-star rating and review, which will help spread the word to more awesome listeners just like you. Head on over to theoptimumhuman.com and subscribe to the free newsletter and get the Optimum Human's Blueprint to the Optimum Life. Download it instantly. Thanks for listening.